everyone, and welcome back to mountmoontcg. Today's video, we're going to be looking at some of the best competitive cards from the Lost Origin expansion, set to be released here in the US September 9th. So this video is going to be done a little bit differently, because unlike the last video I did where I discussed the top 10 cards of a set, I've asked some of our local players to put in their input on what they thought was the best 10 cards from the Lost Origin expansion. So how this worked was they gave me their top 10 list, and then for the card in first place it got 10 points. Second place was 9 points, all the way down to 10th, which got 1 point. So after I took everybody's lists and I tallied up the numbers, we have here the top 10 cards that we think are the best from Lost Origin. Let's take a look. At number 10 we start with Clefairy. Clefairy has the awesome ability Moonwatching, whereas if Clefairy is in your active spot, you search your deck for a psychic energy for each of your bench Clefairy and attach that said energy to that Clefairy. So this can be pretty awesome for bringing a lot of energy into play very, very quickly. So if you have 1 Clefairy active and 3 Clefairy on your bench, hey, you get to attach 3 energies pretty darn quick there to your bench Clefairy. And then of course you can scoop up net the active Clefairy, because it doesn't have any energy on it, put a new Clefairy in the active, use the ability again, and get some more energy. So in one turn, you can have 7 energy in play. How crazy is that? The ability goes well with its attack. For 3 colorless energy, you do 20 times the amount of psychic energy attached to all of your Pokemon. So you can hit some crazy numbers pretty quickly with Clefairy, and that is why it is at number 10. In at number 9 we have Sableye. Now Sableye is in here for some fun late game shenanigans if your opponent's Pokemon have a lot of damage counters on them. For 1 psychic energy, if you have 10 or more cards in the Lost Zone, well then you can put 12 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon any way you like. So Sableye can come in clutch and put some damage counters in some fun places to maybe take a single, double, or triple knockout. So Sableye could be a very, very fun attacker for those late game shenanigans. At number 8, we have Thornton. Now if you've played the Pokemon trading card game for a couple of years now, you know that Thornton sounds a whole lot like Ninja Boy, where Thornton says you can exchange a basic Pokemon you have in play with a basic Pokemon in your discard pile. However, all special conditions, damage counters, energies, cards attached, etc., stay on the new Pokemon. Now this can be very, very cheeky. A fun cheeky idea that a lot of people are bringing up is you can play this in the Regigigas deck with all the Regis and stuff. Because Regigigas has the ability where you can attach a lot of energy cards to it. And since Regigigas is a basic Pokemon, you can switch it with a basic Pokemon in your discard pile that requires a lot of energy. Like I believe there's that Evital. I can't remember if it's an amazing rare Evital or what exactly they call it. But the picture's right here, just in case you... I'm not exactly sure what it's called. I think it's amazing rare Evital, but it just knocks out a Pokemon for 5 energy. So that can be a very, very fun combination. Or you can just, put all the energy in a Regigigas and maybe go into like a basic V, like an Aggron V or something cool like that. But yeah, Thornton could set up a whole lot of fun combinations with your basic Pokemon. It seems like a lot of these cards in this set are going to be for a lot of whole fun shenanigans. And me, I'm on board for all these fun shenanigans. So there is Thornton at number 8. In at number 7, we have Cramorant. Cramorant's ability says if you have 4 or more cards in the Lost Zone, ignore all the energy costs for this attack. And what attack am I talking about? Well, for 3 energy, but let's be real here, you're not using the attack unless you have 4 cards in the Lost Zone, it does 110 damage. But also the attack isn't affected by weakness, but that's okay. So Cramorant can put 110 damage somewhere, and then maybe set up a big bad Pokemon VMAX or Pokemon VSTAR for an easier KO later in the game. You're giving up 1 prize to set up a huge knockout on a VMAX later? I mean, that's kind of very impressive. For no energy, yeah, I think that's pretty darn decent in my book. In at number 6, we have Goodra VSTAR. Goodra's attack for 3 energy does 200 damage. And Goodra VSTAR takes 80 less damage from your opponent's attacks next turn. Now this can be very interesting, because you're not knocking out V-Stars necessarily, but you can knock out a pesky Stage 1, Stage 2 Pokemon, and then take 80 less damage next turn. Goodra decks can be interesting, because they'll do 200 damage, not necessarily knocking out Pokemon V-Stars or VMAXs necessarily, but they can knock out, Stage 1, Stage 2, one prize Pokemon, can take 80 less damage. And then there's also a Radiant Gardevoir, where you can take 20 less damage from attacks. And then there's also a Fantina card. It's a supporter card in the set that says you can only play it if you have 10 or more cards in the Lost Zone. And then your active Pokemon takes 120 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V. So if we add the 120 from the Fantina, the 80 from the Goodra's attack, and the 20 from the Gardevoir, you're essentially eliminating 220 damage that your opponent can do to you. That is really, really cool. And of course, we also got cards like Hyper Potion to get rid of some damage too. I mean, you have to discard 2 energy to do it, but it's a way to heal some damage that you'll take, and Goodra can survive a lot longer. Goodra also has a V-Star power, where you can just heal all damage on Goodra. It forces your opponent to hit it for like 400 damage, which is really, really hard to do. And Goodra, I think, is, I may have it short here at number 6, but, I'm starting to really, really love Goodra when you think about it. It does 200 damage, and you can potentially not take, so much damage. If someone hits you for 200 damage and you're just like, cute. Yeah, Goodra can be a great Pokemon for years to come. In at number 5, we have Kyurem VMAX. Kyurem VMAX has the ability where you discard the top card of your deck. If it's a water energy, attach it to one of your Pokemon. Now this can be good with cards like Oranguru, where if you have a water energy in hand, you can just put it back on top of the deck, and then you can use Kyurem's ability to be like, oh, it's a water energy, I'm just going to attach it wherever I like. Or you can also use cards like Rotom Phone, where you can search the top 5 cards of your deck and see if you have a water energy there. Put it back on top of the deck, shuffle the deck, yada yada yada. You know how Rotom Phone works, but there are cards out there that you can manipulate the top card of the deck to be the water energy that you need. Its attack for 3 water energy does 120 damage. Then you can discard as many water energy as you like from Kyurem, and then for each water energy you discard, it does 50 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So if you discard all 3 water energies, you're doing 270 damage. Of course, if you have 4, then you go on 330, and then that's getting into the VMAX territory. And I think this could be really good, especially if you pair it up with cards like Palkia V-Star, whereas if you discard all the energy from Kyurem VMAX last turn, you can use Palkia V-Star's V-Star ability and put 3 water energies back on Kyurem VMAX. So Kyurem VMAX does have some potential going for it. It's going to be interesting to see if Palkia players decide to play Ice Rider in their deck, or if they decide to play the Kyurem VMAX. Because Kyurem VMAX can actually, there's no limit to how many water energy you can discard, unlike Ice Rider Calyrex, where you can only discard 2. So it's going to be very interesting to see if Kyurem VMAX is going to be really played in these Palkia decks, or if it's going to be a deck on its own. We'll have to wait and find out, but the potential is there to do a whole lot of damage with Kyurem VMAX. Next at number 4, we have Comfey. Now Comfey has a really good ability. You may have noticed that a lot of cards that I have mentioned have something to do with the Lost Zone and putting cards in the Lost Zone. Well, the set is called Lost Origins, so what do you want from me? But Comfey's ability says, when it's in the active spot, you look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 card into your hand, and 1 card in the Lost Zone. So this could be a very great way to not only put an extra card into your hand, but it's to put a card into the Lost Zone. It's very risk-reward with this Comfey ability. But of course, you can use this ability multiple times with cards like Switch, Air Balloon, Scoop Up Net. And so you can easily get 2-3 cards in the Lost Zone easily with a couple of Comfeys out on the field. Because like I said, some of the best cards on this list require you to have some cards in the Lost Zone. And Comfey is going to be a staple for these Lost Zone decks. And that is why Comfey's in at number 4. In at number 3, we have, let's say, the mascot of Lost Origin. We have Giratina VSTAR. Giratina VSTAR has a very powerful attack. For a Psychic Grass Colorless, it does 280 damage, but you gotta put 2 energy cards into the Lost Zone. So it does hit for that magic 280 mark that you need to knock out these VSTAR Pokemon. But there is a little bit of a cost. You gotta get rid of 2 of those energies, put them in the Lost Zone. But again, putting things in the Lost Zone might not be the worst thing, because you need cards in the Lost Zone to do some very fun shenanigans that I mentioned earlier in this list. And now we need to talk about the VSTAR power on Giratina. For Grass Psychic, if you have 10 or more cards in the Lost Zone, your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out. Yeah, if it's a big bad VMAX that just can't seem to get knocked out, yeah, for 2 energy, 10 cards in the Lost Zone, yeah, it's gone. Bye-bye. See you later. Yeah, so the attack earlier that I mentioned when you put 2 cards into the Lost Zone could help get the numbers you need to be able to use the VSTAR power. So yeah, Giratina could shape up to be a very interesting card in this format. Now there are 2 other spots that will help Giratina out a little bit, and also some other decks. So it might not make too much sense why Giratina VSTAR is in the number 3 spot, but I do promise you, number 1 and number 2 help Giratina out a whole lot. In at number 2, we have Colress's Experiment. Colress's Experiment says that you may look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Put 3 of them into your hand. Put the other 2 in the Lost Zone. Again, Colress is a very good card that can help put some of these cards into the Lost Zone to help Giratina with its VSTAR power attack, or any other cards like Fantina, or the Sableye, the Cramorant, whatever you need to do to put cards in the Lost Zone to use these Pokemon's attacks, or use these supporter cards. But again, Colress is very aggressive. You're putting 2 cards in the Lost Zone, but you get to put 3 cards into your hand. So that's not too bad. I've heard a lot of people online saying that Colress's Experiment is too aggressive because you're losing the 2 lost. You're putting 2 cards in the Lost Zone. But then again, Professor's Research is a very aggressive card where you discard your hand, draw 7 cards, and that sees a lot of play. So I don't see why my decks wouldn't be playing 2, 3, 4 Colress's Experiment. You draw 5 cards, 2 go in the Lost Zone. Hopefully it's not the worst case scenario for you. You're not drawing 4 double turbo energy and you got to put 2 of them in the Lost Zone. That would suck. But anyhow, I think Colress's Experiment is going to be a staple in a lot of these Lost Zone decks. Actually, you could put Colress's Experiment in almost any other deck. If you got Cramorant or Sableye, Colress's Experiment is a very good card to help power up some of those other Pokemon's attacks. And it will be a staple. But before we get to number 1, I just want to name a couple of honorable mentions. Hisuian Arcanine, Radiant Gardevoir, and Lost City. In at number 1, we have Mirage Gate. Mirage Gate states that if you have 7 or more cards in the Lost Zone, you search your deck for 2 different basic energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon any way that you like. Guys, this card is amazing. I mean, there's going to be a lot of cards that put, things into the Lost Zone, the Comfey, the Colress's Experiment, etc., etc. So getting 7 cards in the Lost Zone is not going to be that difficult, I feel. And you get to attach 2 energy from the deck to your Pokemon any way you like. That is insane, guys. Do you realize how insane this is? Think about this. If you're playing a, I don't know, let's just say a water deck. Let's argue a water deck. You can use cards like Irida. You search for the water Pokemon and a, item card. You can search for the Mirage Gate and then use it. And at least you get a water energy that you can attach straight away if you don't run, another basic energy card. But also think about this. You can play 4 of them in one turn. 7 cards in a Lost Zone. You can play 4 of them. You can play 4 of them, accelerate 8 energy. That is crazy, guys. This card can help so many decks out, and you can put so many weird combinations with this. Remember the Giratina I mentioned earlier? Well, of course, you put 2 cards in a Lost Zone, what are you going to do? Play Mirage Gate. Put those 2 energy cards from the deck back onto Giratina, you're doing 280 damage again. Guys, that is just insane. To knock out 3 VSTARs, to attack 3 times in a row, doing 280 consistently, that is insane. That is why Giratina's at number 3. These cards like Colress, Mirage Gate can really help Giratina decks. They can help so many other kinds of fun decks. They can help Goodra decks. They can help anything. I think the possibilities are endless with Mirage Gate. The fact you can put a couple of cards you might not necessarily need in the Lost Zone, and then just Mirage Gate, energy from the deck, just somewhere on the field. Just 1 is insane. But 2 to your Pokemon any way you like. Ladies and gentlemen, this card is phenomenal. It is great. It is hard to not see the potential in this card. This card has so much potential for so many decks, guys. And we all know that energy acceleration is really, really good. But guys, I'm so excited for Mirage Gate. If you're planning on playing in upcoming regionals, I think Peoria is the first regional where this set will be legal. You got to get your copies of Mirage Gate because this card, I think, will dramatically change the format. And guys, that will do it. That is our top 10 best competitive cards from the Lost Origin set. Are there cards that we left off this list that you're really excited about? What is your guys' top 10 favorite Lost Origin cards? Leave it down in the comment section down below, and we'll see you guys next time here on Mount Moon TCG.